We're going to get started. So thank you guys all for coming. Today we have Lauren Burleson. She's our Vice President of Active Minds, and she's going to share a story. But first she has a video that she'd like to show you, so we're going to get that started first. Yeah. Oh, I'll sit. It's really short. I should put music. Oh, I was going to say, is there music? No, it's not. I didn't get that far. Okay, so yeah, I'm Lauren Burleson. Is this like, if I do this, you guys still hear me? Okay, alright, so first off, some of you know me pretty well, others of you don't, but despite this I do want to say thank you all for coming, I really appreciate it. So as you can tell with my PowerPoint presentation, my SORO is about self-harm, and I know it's a very delicate subject, so I'm going to do my best to present it as such, like just be careful of what words I use, but because it is touchy for some people. However, I want you guys to know that brought me to where I was and the positive that has brought me to where I am today. And because I think it's important to know like both sides of the story, like both how I got to where I was and the great things that I'm doing now. So I'm going to go back starting at sophomore year of high school. And you can kind of like, when you think about movies about high school students, think of like the typical average American teenage girl, and that was totally me. I was involved in sports. I was kind of comfortably in like the middle of the popularity spectrum. I wasn't like way up there and I wasn't like down there, just kind of like chilling in the middle. I got good grades. You know, on the outside I was fun-loving, optimistic, smiling, Lauren. It was a good time. But on the inside, I was struggling a lot, and I kind of put on a mask every day that I was in school. I wouldn't say that I was necessarily a perfectionist, but each day I woke up and I was just scared to death of making a huge mistake, or making even the smallest mistake on some days, that getting even an A- was just not enough for me. My mom still to this day says that since I was born, I always wanted my life like in a neat little box, like tied tight with a bow that would just be, you know, things would just work out, but I've learned that that's not really how life works. And that was just never the case. Nothing I ever did felt good enough for me or for anyone around me. I was always like a good athlete, but I wasn't the greatest. I felt overpowered by my peers at school and even my closest friends, and especially within my family. My older sister was a big competitor for me and a big feeling of how I felt insignificant when I was growing up. There just seemed to be no escape from people that were better than me. Because at home I had my sister, and at school I had, you know, just my close friends that I just couldn't compete with, it felt like. Like I would be taking one AP class and my friend would be taking like 3, and I'm like, I should be doing that, but I just felt inferior. And going back to my house, like I would see my sister, and your sister is supposed to be like someone you can turn to and someone that you have a lot of like a really close relationship with. And while we did, had a lot of negative aspects, and we were really similar in like with what we did on the outside. Like we played the same sport, we had the same attitude about grades, and we had the same like crazy busy schedules, but she always seemed to do it just a little bit better than me. She got like, we both played volleyball, so she would get, you know, 5 more kills than I did in the tournament that weekend, or she would ace out a game and I wouldn't. It would just be little things like that that would build up to be the big things. So I just began to compare myself to her and everyone else, and I eventually came to the conclusion that I was just average. There was nothing special about me and nothing to be proud about, and I was just, you know, me, Lauren. Throughout all of this, still in high school, there were a lot of boy issues because that's what high school is. It's like a torture place of like girls and guys. It's just horrible. But while I'm not going to sit here and bore you with the he said, she said details of my love life in high school, I will share just a couple of things that really contributed to my self-harm tendencies later on. I've been dating someone for almost a year, and we just started to have issues, and I just didn't feel loved anymore. I felt more of like a burden, like someone he had to hang out with instead of someone that he wanted to hang out with. And it just made me feeling really unwanted and even more alone than I did at school and at home. And then while these like troubles were going on, an older guy came into the picture, and this guy, like, I don't know, if I could like have painted a picture, like it would have been him, like of like the perfect guy. Like he was great. He would like text me or like call me after I'd hung out with my current boyfriend and be like, Lauren, I would never do that to you. Like he doesn't know how good he has it. You are such a cool person. I would never hurt you like that. And he would always put me first in his life. So I did break up with that current boyfriend, so now I was single, so that was taken care of. But the older guy would text me and be like, let's hang out and all of this, but the age difference obviously made that an issue that wouldn't have been a good choice. He also didn't live close by, but the relationship that we had quickly escalated after I broke up with my boyfriend. It went from just texting to video chatting online to talking on the phone while we fell asleep with each other. It was just like, it got really intense really fast. And for me, I was like, this is, you know, how I want to be treated. I want to feel loved, and I felt really wanted. Like he always wanted to talk to me, and it was just always really sweet. So I got really caught up in this relationship, and it probably like was going on like this for about a month and a half to 2 months. And that's when things changed. Enter my sister. I was on a club volleyball team, and I had a volleyball scrimmage in town coming up on a weeknight, and he was gonna come. And my sister was home from college, and she was gonna come too because I didn't see her a lot during the year. And I was like elated that this guy was coming, and he really wanted to see me. He didn't live close to where the scrimmage was. He was about half an hour away, and he was gonna come and see me. And I was so pumped. Like I was like, I'm gonna play my best. This is gonna be amazing. He's gonna see how awesome I am. And he wanted to see me, and I was finally wanted. So during that scrimmage, I was on like an emotional high. Like it was great. I was playing great, and I looked over to the bleachers like as many times as I could to like make eye contact with him. But he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at my sister, and he talked to her the entire game. So I was about 15 at this time, and it was just like a knife. Like it was just really hard to handle, just especially with my past with my sister, just not being good enough. So I just was just not a happy person after that game. So my sister drove me home, and just the whole drive home, my sister was just gushing on and on about how great this guy was. And no one obviously knew that I had been talking to this guy because he was older than me, and my parents obviously would not have been happy. So my sister like sees this as like, this is great, this new guy's coming to my life, he's awesome, he's great, blah, 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 he's awesome, he wants me to do this, he wants me to hang out, I'm going over his house. And I'm just sitting there, and I can't tell her that I've been talking to this guy for months, that he told me he wants to marry me, that he told me he wants to be with me forever. And I'm just like, that's great, that's awesome, good for you. So we got home, and I went upstairs, and I showered up and everything, and I texted him, and I was like, what's going on, like, what's the deal? And he sent me a text back, and he said, go back to your old boyfriend, and that was it. So that basically was a big turner of my sense of worthlessness. Like I was like, wow, what does that say? Like I wasn't worth anything if some other person, like it didn't even have to be my sister, it could have been anyone, comes in and takes this guy right away from me. I was like, I must have meant nothing. Like if he was going to lie to me about this kind of thing my whole life. And it was just a big letdown and a horrible feeling inside of me. I just felt like he threw me away right away when something better came along, and nobody wanted me. My sister was better than me, prettier than me, smarter than me, just everything. Like she was a total package, and I was just me, still just me. So that night began the cutting. I felt like my whole world was falling apart. Nothing seemed fun for me anymore because the volleyball was my outlet, and the place where this whole thing happened between my sister and this guy was at volleyball, and it was just not the same for me, really, for a while. So that night I just grabbed a pair of scissors and cut line after line. I put on my iPod first to distract me because I wasn't sure what it was going to feel like. And it hurt. You know, it did hurt. But it was nothing in comparison to what I was feeling like on the inside. Like the emotional pain was just dulled by that pain because it wasn't as much. So cutting sort of became a ritual for me. When the lines started to fade, like on my wrist, like they wouldn't be there anymore, I would pull out the scissors again and just do it again right on top so that they would always be there. Because when they started to fade, I didn't feel tough or strong anymore, because my definition of being strong was, you know, being pushed down, being beat up, and being able to still do daily things. So my definition was just that, so I just kept doing it time after time. It was probably about once or twice a week at that point. It was pretty regular. I would just do my shoulders, stomach, thighs, wrists. They're all permanently scarred. And the part that's hardest to explain to people, and eventually later on when people found out, is the fact that for me, self-harm was something that I liked to do. Like I got like addicted to it. I kind of say it's kind of an addiction because I was doing it so common. And it was just something that I liked. I loved the feeling of being in control of something in my life. Like I could control when I did this, how many times I did it, where I did it, instead of having a lack of control in my life. So, I mean, I just liked seeing the cuts in my skin and like seeing what I'd done to myself. It made me feel tough. I just felt power and strength when I looked in the mirror and saw what I had done to myself. It was just something that I felt I had to do. This trend of cutting once or twice a week continued for a long time. When I went back to playing sports and I had to wear t-shirts again, I covered up my wrist with medical tape and said I like hurt my wrist or something in volleyball, something like that. Come up with a lie to hide it. And people believe me, you know. My friends were like, oh, that sucks, you know, I hope your wrist gets better. Are you gonna go to a doctor? And I'd be like, yeah, maybe, you know, and just kind of put it off. But the one person that didn't believe me was my mom. My mom is like my best friend. So it was really hard lying to her, but she knows me better than I know myself. And she, you know, confronted me and was like, what is going on? Like, what happened? Like, let me see your wrist. And I was like, in my head, I was like, this is stupid. Nobody cares. It's my body. I can do what I want to it. Just leave me alone. Because, I mean, I'm just me still. Like, I'm not anyone special. Like, who really cares what I do? It's myself. So, eventually, I did end up telling my mom. And that was the best thing I could have ever done. I remember we were leaving Kohl's department store, and we were sitting in the car. And I was going to drive home, so I was working to get my license. And I was sitting in the driver's seat, and I, just didn't start the car. And she was like, what's going on? And I just said it. I was like, Mom, you know how I've been wearing medical tape on my wrist? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, I cut myself. And she, didn't say anything. She couldn't even form words. She wasn't sure how to handle it. But after a couple minutes, I just let there be silence. She got herself calmed down, and we talked and talked and talked in that parking lot for a very long time. It was dark by the time we left, and it was light when we got there. To leave the parking lot, I had to agree to see a psychologist, and I did. And when I got there, I was diagnosed with clinical depression. I was put on antidepressants, and I visited my psychologist 2 to 4 times a month. And therapy, it was good. A lot changed for me. It was like I realized who I was and what I was really capable of. I started to feel, better about myself, and it was good. It was it's hard to explain to someone who hasn't gone through it and come out a completely new person. But the lame analogy of like flicking on a light switch is kind of like the best way to explain it. And just seeing the light come on, it's just like, oh, it makes sense now. So that was kind of how that was. But despite all of this, like I wasn't in therapy all the time, and the struggles of, you know, high school, being surrounded by people that have made you feel inadequate for so long, continued. So it took me a very long time, which you guys will continue to hear about, to finally lay down the scissors for good. Even while I was in therapy, I relapsed, if you will, many, many times, and I'll continue to share them. But like I said, putting the scissors away did not happen quickly. I had them taken away from me. They weren't in the house, so it was difficult trying to get them. Like I went out and bought pairs to have my own and hid them, but the next 1.5 years, so I'm about 16 now, so till the time I was 17 and a half, the road was just a big roller coaster of ups and downs. It was for the rest of my junior and senior year. I mean, I did pretty well in terms of managing my depression and tendency to self-harm. And it would be more like maybe once a month, once every 2 months. It was more spaced out, so it wasn't as much of an addiction, but something would just set it off. And I would just have a really bad day, and something my sister did would just make it worse, and I'd just feel horrible, and I would just turn to self-harm. And the thing that people always told me, especially my mom during that time, was, she's like, whenever you feel like this, you need to call me. And there's just, I get that she loves me and she's there for me, but there's the major problem with that is, for me, when I decided I was gonna hurt myself, it took over your brain. You didn't think of anything else until you did it. So there was even if I wanted to call her, I just couldn't. It was just grab scissors, go. There was no, should I? Let's weigh the pros and cons here. It was just, yes, go. So that was hard for her to explain, like it is to a lot of people that don't go through this experience. But I tried my best to kind of explain that to her. So despite those ups and downs, before I went to college, I made a pact with myself that this was going to be the turning point. This was going to be, I'm going off to college, I'm going to prove I'm independent, I'm going to prove, I've got this in the bag, it's going to be good. That these years were going to be the time when I was going to be happy all the time and energetic and confident with myself. But the transition to college came to me very stressful. It was very stressful for me, and I had a lot of anxiety with college, with the transition, being away from home, that I ended up not being able to handle, myself very well here. At the beginning, classes started off pretty well. They were kind of my escape, because I like school. I'm kind of a nerd like that, but I like going to classes, and I felt at home in my classes. It felt better than being out of class, because I was just able to focus on academics. But classes are fine. But my dad was pressuring me a lot to get a job on campus, and of course, right around the time that I didn't have a job, my sister just landed a new job that was a really good job, and I didn't have one. I never had a job besides babysitting. And it was just, every time I talked to my dad, it was like, have you got a job yet? Have you got a job yet? You should really get a job yet. Your job now, your sister has one. She's getting paid this much. She's working tonight. Get a job. And I'm not a work-study student, so it's really hard. Everyone knows it's really hard to get jobs on campus. So I just looked on the internet every day, asked people, and I came across an opening at Einstein's and applied just super quick, just so I could just get my dad off my back. I didn't even think about how stressful it would be working there. So I just wanted my dad to just lay off for a while. And the job turned out to be really stressful. I can't really pinpoint exactly what it was about the job that made me sick to my stomach every time I had to go there. The coworkers were nice. I was getting the hang of things. It wasn't exceedingly difficult or anything like that. It was just, the problem was every time I went to work, I was afraid that I was going to do something wrong, to the point that it made me physically sick. And I had to call in for work because I was just getting sick in the bathroom. I threw up at work and had to leave. I couldn't handle the possibility of making a mistake. So after I got the job, and that started happening to me, everything else just slowly started to fall apart. I began to self-harm again because I couldn't handle the anxiety that I was feeling. but it was more difficult this time for me because my arms were kind of off limits because I had to, wear a t-shirt to work. And the anxiety was a lot. It wouldn't go away. It lasted with me until late at night. I wasn't sleeping. By that point, I wasn't worrying just about work. I was worrying about absolutely everything that was going on in my life. Then everything just got escalated because it was just that last piece just set everything else off. Just the fact that I was self-harming again worried me a lot too, because I knew my mom would be really upset if she found out, because she was so happy sending me off to college. Like, this is going to be your time, these are going to be your years, you're moving on, forget your past, and here I had come back to exactly how I was before. And that was hard for me to handle and hard for me to accept. Everything just seemed to be too much for me. And I felt like the world was just like weighing down on me, and I couldn't get out of bed in the morning, I couldn't stand up. It was just, I was carrying all this weight, and I just wanted to stay in bed all the time and just curl up and never come out and just stay in my room, but I couldn't do that. Around December, I started to look into transferring to a college closer to my house so I could live at home with my family and commute and maybe do therapy more regularly, because I was self-harming again and I wasn't sure how to handle that, because I wanted to go where I was comfortable and familiar, and that was back home. I begun the process to transfer next year. So at the end of December, I found out that I could actually make the spring deadline for a new school. So I withdrew from Carthage the second day of J-term, and J-term was really hard for me. I was just like, by that point, like, I was just so anxiety ridden that I was just shaking constantly. I couldn't, like, I went to class like once and I just didn't go the second day, and I just felt like I needed to get off campus as soon as possible. I went home. My mom came and got me that second day, and I spent the rest of J-term talking with my mom and actually just like trying to breathe and think straight for the first time in months with her help. I went in to see my psychologist and psychiatrist and talked with them about what my options were. We kind of talked a lot and decided that withdrawing from Carthage was more of a cry for help than something I really wanted, because I loved Carthage since the day I came here my junior year of high school. Like, I was in love with it. And I realized that the school wasn't causing me pain, but like myself and my mindset was causing me the pain. So after a couple emails and phone calls with registrars and all of that craziness, I got okay to come back to Carthage for my spring term, so I was here. And I decided I was going to stay because it's a great school and I love it. And I wasn't going to let something like hurt me that wasn't even hurting me. So spring semester started off slow, and it took me a while to like get back in the swing of things, because J-term was, another 4 or 5 weeks off that I just had like a lot of time just to myself, and I wasn't, prepared for how it was going to be. But for the most part, it was manageable until around March and April. I had been dating someone since like the middle of that last summer, and things weren't going well, and I decided that it was time for us to break up. And so around March and early April, I broke up with him after almost a year. He was very like controlling and selfish and just all that kind of stuff. So he responded very negatively. He told me he was going to hurt himself and that he was really depressed and really upset with me, and he was basically going to do what I had been doing to myself for so long. The problem with this that was really hard for me to swallow is that my mindset has always been, when I hurt someone, like, I should hurt too. So the whole breakup caused me to hurt myself again, a lot. It was very regular. A couple of my friends noticed at Relay for Life that year and asked me, what was going on, because it was on my wrist. But I tried to cover them up with like those rubber bracelets and hair ties, but it didn't work out very well. I didn't really open up to anyone about it right away. When they asked me, I kind of dodged it a little bit. But when I was home over that spring break, I wanted to go to therapy again and get some more help in how to manage my self-harm issues. The only thing that's hard, that it keeps coming back, that they're like, why can't you just stop? Like, you're coming so far. Like, I'd go a couple months without hurting myself at all, and I'd be like, this is good, this is a really good streak, and then I would just come crashing back down. And the thing that's like, my mom just never understood why I couldn't just keep a good streak going. But the thing is that it is so addicting once you start, and it's really hard to stop because it is so impulsive. and it's really hard to just like, when you get upset, if you've been using that as a coping mechanism, not to revert back to it. My therapist always told my mom that stopping had to be my choice, and that she couldn't do a lot to help me. Like, it had to come from inside of me. So she basically was telling my mom that she had to be really, really patient, which I know was really hard for my mom. Over last summer, I got back together with that boyfriend that I mentioned before that I broke up with around relay. Although this time it didn't last very long. He moved back to Florida. The distance was really hard, and he reverted back to his old behavior. But the relationship didn't last as long as the other time, but the breakup was about 100 times worse. He texted me. He's like, I have a gun in my car. I'm driving. I'm gonna, do this to myself. It was really hard for me to handle. Like, my mom had to come down and see me in the middle of the week and talk to him the whole way down, because she wouldn't let him talk to me because she knew that I was probably going to hurt myself because he was hurting so bad. So I was just like an emotional wreck at that point, and he was as well. And I don't want to like just say like everything that he said, because it was just like so horrible that even when I think about it, like I just like that was just like my scariest memories, especially like what happened after my mom left and I was alone. It's probably like my scariest memory of my self-harm kind of length of time, because it felt like I was out of my body the next day when I hurt myself. I took scissors and I cut my stomach really bad. I probably will never wear a two-piece swimsuit again. It was the worst time that I had ever hurt myself. And I ended up, after that, confiding in a friend of mine, and he ended up telling a hall director. And they came to my room, I think a couple days later, and asked me to leave and had a meeting with me. They sent me to the DOS, and I met with Louise. And then, I was required to go see Deborah and talk with her a couple times, which was good. I mean, it was just stuff I had to do, and at that point, I just felt like I was going through the motions. Like, she's like, here, these are things we have to do, because this, came up, and this is what, what we have to do here. So I did that, and I also saw my psychologist and psychiatrist at home, and got medication adjusted, and things like talked out, which really helped a lot. And after some really, really intense therapy sessions where I was just lost it every time, like I finally started to see like the light switch kind of thing again. And this time I was really determined to make the light stay on. Like, I didn't want to go back to how I was. I was so sick and tired of the continuous cycle of ups and downs for 4 years. Like, I was just so sick of it. I was angry, I think, initially when I got called to the DOS and everything, because I was just like, I confided in somebody. But then after everything, like it was probably like a major turning point, because then I was relieved that I was finally able to just get out of this charade of putting on a mask and being in denial of how bad my self-harm was. And this behavior had just made my life what it was and consumed my life for 4 years, and I was just done and ready to fix that issue for good. The rest of last semester was dedicated to getting better, focusing on the positives in my life, and things like that, just the things that made me feel confident in myself, the things that made me feel good I was doing, instead of, judging like myself based on other people and things like that. The holidays were good, Christmas was good. I was home, that feeling of being with family and feeling loved really recharged me and made me feel really confident, because I was scared to death of J-term because of what happened the year before. I was so nervous to go back to school. I did not want to leave, but I was like, I really need to take a J-term. Like, I need to go back. So I did. I went back, and my mom was, drove me down and talked to me and was supportive. And was like, if you need me, call me. And I was like, okay. I was really thankful that my roommate was coming back, because then I knew I wouldn't be alone as much, which, I mean, if she wasn't coming back, I would have probably been really apprehensive about coming back, because that a lot of time alone is never really good because I had just been going, you know, it was probably like month 2 that I hadn't hurt myself, so it was still kind of new in that cycle. So I got back to campus. I was really nervous and anxious, but things went well. Things turned out to be okay. I really liked my class, and I decided to focus purely on academics like I had done my freshman year, and keep myself occupied with that and try not to think about other things. And I'm really happy to say, like, I made it through J-term and I did not hurt myself that entire month, and I was really, really proud. And that was like probably one of the first times I felt really, truly proud of myself, because it's something that had been haunting me for 4 years, and I was finally able to go through one of the toughest months that a cutting incident had happened without reverting back to it, and I was just really happy with that. And so I went back home after J-term, and I was like, my mom and I like went out and we like talked about it, and we were both just really happy that J-term was over and that it went so successfully. So with that being said, the last time that I did hurt myself was in October. So let's see, December, January, February, March, 4 months. That's not the longest I've gone, but it's not the shortest either. So still working on making that streak continue, but I don't feel like it's going to come back anytime soon, because just today I'm involved at Carthage a lot, as people know. I always joke I don't have enough colors to color code my schedule, but it's exciting. It's my new coping mechanism. People say, how do you even handle it? I'm like, it's a better coping mechanism than what I've been using in the past, and it's fun for me. I meet wonderful people. I just have such a great core group of friends that I know I can talk to about anything. I'm in Pals and Partners, College Against Cancer, VP of Active Minds, yay. As Megan mentioned before, I'm working on training some wonderful pledges for Pi Delta Chi, all 64 of you, love it. Worship band for InterVarsity, recently became a new member of the wonderful sorority of Alpha Chi Omega. And the thing I want to say about Alpha Chi Omega was, back earlier in my speech I mentioned how my definition of strength was being tough and being like cut up and hurting myself, and that made me powerful. But I've learned that that's not what strength is. Like, being a strong person is being able to do stuff like this, being able to like talk about it. So cutting used to make me feel strong, but now I see it as something that doesn't do that for me anymore. It's doing what I do now, doing things like this and helping others is what strength really is all about. And so I'm really grateful that I learned that lesson from some wonderful, wonderful people this year. I've learned to surround myself with those that are just going to lift me higher and not bring me down. And that's just all the wonderful people that I work with every organization I'm in. I look forward to every meeting I go to, and I'm bummed when I can't make like a meeting. Like, it's just something I really look forward to. These people have truly made a difference in my life as a student, my life as a woman, my life as a future mental health professional, fingers crossed. They truly made a difference in me. And to any of those that are currently struggling with something similar to something that I went through, or just you're just sad sometimes, I really encourage you guys to go out and get involved, because it's truly made all the difference in my recovery personally. And I think it's a really good thing to do when you have the opportunity with Carthage. Meeting with others and working together to do great things is a great way to help you focus on something else, and a great way to help you keep your mind off the things that have been bringing you down and things that you don't really want to think about. It definitely helped me, and I know it can help you guys too if that's something you're struggling with. And just a little sidebar, if you want to talk to me about like that after any questions, like, I'm always willing to like talk with people on an individual basis. So a little sidebar for that. But keeping me busy is just my new coping mechanism, and it gives me things to work towards and things to look forward to. I have events, planned all the time, and I'm always advertising something on Facebook, or something's going on, and I'm now a person that looks forward to the future instead of being completely afraid of the future and completely afraid about making mistakes that will jeopardize that future. There came a point where I just realized that I can't control some things in my life, and that's true for everybody, and that doesn't mean that I need to take out that frustration on myself, because some things you just can't control. I needed to be able to love myself and keep myself strong so I could face the challenges that I knew were ahead of me. I know I'm going to face challenges, but now that I have new ways of dealing with that, I need to remember to implement those through ahead. My current job is also something that I love very much and keeps me in check. I write for a mental health website, so I have a blog on there, and it's really fun. And it really helps me reach out to others that are experiencing similar situations, and it really helps me focus on my future, you know, instead of looking at my past and reverting back to tough times that I had. In addition to being involved in school, I found my faith again. And I'm not going to stand up here and lecture to you or preach to you or anything like that, but because I know that not everybody sees things that way, but I do just want to say that for me it was probably the biggest factor in turning me into the person that I am today. And I have just done a complete turnaround since last time I heard myself, and I had my faith and God to thank for that. And I just didn't want to finish my speech without saying that. And just overcoming my tendency to self-harm was probably the most difficult thing, was the most difficult thing I've ever had to do. But looking back at my experience, I do see it as something that has made me stronger, and it's something that will always be a part of me and help me help others through it later in life. While I'm still on medication for depression and anxiety, it's completely different than it used to be. I don't feel the need or desire to hurt myself like I used to feel that addiction. I don't feel that anymore. It's, it's under control. It's not like that. While some days are harder than others when it comes to finding different ways to cope with certain situations, I'm confident with my ability to look to the future and look towards how things are going to get better in time. I used to have this whole motto, they always say, once a cheater, always a cheater. I was like, once a cutter, always a cutter. But I've found that this is not true. That you can overcome anything if you have the right support and the right people around you to bring you out of it. I'm getting more confident with using the past tense and saying that I was a cutter because I no longer am for 4 months. I plan on continuing that streak because each day I know that I'm getting stronger and getting better at moving forward in a positive way. Today, I don't deny it when people confront me about my scars. I don't lie about it anymore. I don't deny that it happened to me because it did. And it has sadly happened and most likely will continue to happen to many more individuals. I think it was 12 to 24% was the statistic I found. And this is the fact that it is becoming more prevalent due to its secretive nature is the reason why I'm majoring in psychology and sociology, and I'm involved in organizations like Active Minds. I'm using my past for a better future for not just myself but for everyone else, because these issues need to be addressed and the stigma of mental health needs to be erased. There's nothing crazy or messed up about it. I'm not crazy for hurting myself for an amount of years. Jimmy isn't crazy for being suicidal, and Mary isn't messed up because she has ADHD or anxiety. People are just people, and everyone deserves to be able to stand up confidently and say, I am just, insert name here, Lauren, and proud of it. Thank you.
For Lauren right now that you'd like to ask her?
If you don't, it's totally cool.
If not, you can. I'm sure you can come and talk to her afterward. So let's give her another round of applause. Thank you everybody for coming. We really appreciate it. Our next Speak Out Reach Out will be March 27th. So please try to come to that one as well. And if you have any questions about the program, you can talk to me or you can talk to Lauren afterwards. So thank you.
Oh yeah.